So I have just finished watching Manchester United's pre-season game against Real Betis, which means it is time to do my post-match reaction. If you want to see my predictions for tomorrow's men's quarterfinals of the Olympics, that video is going to be posted for you at midday today, so we don't have that clash of two videos being posted at the same time, but I am going to record that as soon as I am finished here. But today we are going to talk about Manchester United against Real Betis in what was by far our best performance of pre-season so far, certainly in those first 60 minutes when what you would call the actual first team was on the pitch. The only sort of things you have to question is, was it a really adequate test of our capabilities? Because, to be honest, at times it felt really, really easy to play around Real Betis. So you got to ask that little question of, is it because we played so well, or is it because Real Betis didn't play that well? It is worth noting that Betis played Liverpool the other day and only lost 1-0. We've obviously won 3-2. So there is a sort of balance to it all. And obviously Liverpool also beat Arsenal last night, who beat us the other night. So there is some sort of balance to it all. But like I say, that first 60 minutes was absolutely fantastic, some of the football we were playing. And we will jump straight to the absolute star of those 60 minutes, which was Amad Diallo. What an unbelievable performance and what a pre-season. Definitely our standout player in pre-season so far. And to be honest, right now, he absolutely must start in the Community Shield. And provided he doesn't pick up any injuries, must start the opening Premier League game against Fulham in a couple of weeks' time. And I will put in my community page a vote for you. I'll put a link to it available in the top corner of your screen. A link to the community page where I'll put a vote of who you want to see as our two wingers going into that game against Fulham. Not necessarily the Man City game, but certainly the Fulham game. Are you going to want to see Rashford and Garnacho, Rashford and Amad, or Garnacho and Amad? For me, those are the only real options. I don't think it's going to be Sancho. It's definitely not going to be Antony, and we'll get to him. And I really don't think it's going to be Pellistri. But Amad was absolutely immense. Some of his touches, his dribbling, his shooting, the goal itself, the power on that shot was unbelievable. But the other chances he had, he was unlucky not to score. And again, more importantly, the opportunities he was getting in the wide areas, he was then looking to create as well. It wasn't like when Antony's out there and he always comes in and shoots. It wasn't like when Rashford's normally on the left-hand side and he always comes in and shoots. Amad was always looking to play the right option. His runs in behind, the pace. He showed some real pace. To be fair, all three of them did. Rashford, Sancho and Amad. All three of them showed some real good pace today. I think the setup actually worked pretty well. It was very reminiscent of how we lined up against City in the FA Cup final, with McTominay sort of as the focal point, and then Sancho, Amad and Rashford as the three that would then sort of drift around Scott McTominay as your focal point. There was no out-and-out number 9, but McTominay was the one that was in the middle, and then you had the creative players floating around him. And they all played relatively well, to be fair, but Amad by far the standout performer of that first half. At this point, it is worth noting that the referee was absolutely shambolic today, and the American officials in both of these pre-season games on the American tour so far have been absolutely shocking. There were decisions that went 2 and 4, both teams, that shouldn't have been given. The penalty that Amad won for us immediately after we conceded was absolutely never a penalty. Obviously, it was well scored by Rashford. Rashford himself then should have had a penalty when, I can't remember which Betis player it was, but literally stamped on his ankle in the box, forced Rashford to go off. Thankfully, only an impact injury. It's not going to be the 3 months that Yoro's going to be out for his ankle injury. And then Betis should have had another penalty in the second half when Sam Murray brought down Rodri. And there were other instances where Man United players put in fouls on Betis players that weren't given. There was one where Amad was 2 yards offside. The flag didn't go up. He then played it to McTominay. McTominay got hacked down 1v1 and the referee gave nothing. And look, 2 wrongs don't make a right. But if you're given the onside, you've then got to give the free kick and the red card. And it was just an absolute mess. And there was even one towards the end where Mason Mount got flattened from behind when he was 1-on-1 and no foul was given for that either. So officiating an absolute abysmal, and sadly it has to be talked about because that is obviously one of the goals that we scored was from that penalty. But it was a penalty well won by Amad, to conclude my point about how well that Amad was playing. Really impressed with him. Equally, maybe not quite equally, but just behind how good the performance from Amad was how good the performance from Casemiro was. And they were saying on commentary how all the chat around Manchester at the moment regarding Casemiro is he has to play every minute of every game to slowly build up his capabilities, and he's just one of those players that has to keep playing. And I have seen a progression from him in the 4 pre-season games we played so far. I moaned about him against Rosenborg. I thought he was all right against Rangers. I thought it was a bit culpable against Arsenal, but still looked good on the ball. But today, absolutely fantastic. His break-up play was back to the way it used to be. And his passing, whether it was the 50-yard long balls in behind to, like I said, the pace of Amass, Sancho and Rashford, whether it was whipping balls into the box towards the back post, Rashford had a header from a Casemiro first-time whip pass, or whether it was scoring a goal as well. Let's not forget that. Casemiro scored a goal. And what a performance from him. So, I don't know. Maybe that's a shop window performance. Maybe it's a sign that Casemiro might be coming back to his best. We will find out over the course of the next couple of weeks, I'm sure. Liverpool will obviously be a much tougher test for him. Manchester City, in a competitive final, is obviously going to be a much bigger test for him. And then we'll see what happens going into the Premier League game. But really impressed with Casemiro. And finally, in terms of individual performances in that first half, I have to single out Harry Amass, 17 years of age. Little bit at fault for Betis' goal. I'll get to that in a moment as well. But again, his response was fantastic. He was up against Real Betis' best player on the night, which was Rodri. And it was a battle. And that is testament to him because Rodri was their best player on the night. But Harry Amass matched him as much as he didn't. So it was a real 50-50 struggle. Rodri got the better of him on the goal. Minutes later, Amass gets the better of Rodri to then create Ahmad's goal with a brilliant cross, which McTominay should have done better with. Thankfully, Ahmad was there to pick it up and slam it in. But really impressed for a youngster to do that well. And like I say, the only real blot on our first 60-minute performance is that it did still end 3-2. And that is because we conceded 2 goals that were just horrendous goals to concede. Firstly, like I said, Harry Amass, a little bit culpable. He switched off. Rodri got in behind him. Rodri went for goal. Heaton makes a good save. Maguire sort of goes to clear it. And then Tom Heaton sort of like jumps on it and swipes it back to Rodri, who then just has the simple task of squaring it, and it's an open net. So, real sloppy from Tom Heaton. Obviously, we know it's not going to be him come the start of the season. It's still going to be Onana and most likely still Bayandir. But if Bayandir's moving on, I think it will be Vitex. But who knows? We'll see. Very, very sloppy from Tom Heaton. And then the second goal is another set piece. And it wasn't the only set piece that we looked like we were going to concede from. And I know we're about to appoint a new set piece coach, but their job needs to be sorting out defensive set pieces, not offensive set pieces. And I know that we've been struggling to score from set pieces as well, which I'm hoping is not the sole reason this guy's coming in. Because we've got to sort out this half-zonal, half-man marking on set pieces. It does not work. I'm not saying it doesn't work, period, although I'm very suspect of it when I see Arsenal concede so many goals from it as well, and I see many international teams at the Euros conceding from it, and I see teams in the Champions League conceding from it, but definitely doesn't work for Manchester United. It really, really doesn't, and it's becoming a major, major worry for me that every time an opposition side gets a free kick or a corner, we are not marking the people that need marking. And that's how the goal happens. Short corner, comes back out to the corner taker. Everyone sort of stops, but they're still in that box. And you've got a 6'2" centre-half who's got a free header at the back post because all the wrong players are marking all the wrong players. And it's 3-2. And that's the real worry for me, is that, like I said, we had our best pre-season showing today. And at the end of the first team's efforts, it was only 3-2. And we've still conceded 2 goals. So definitely still work needed to be done in that side of things. Like I say, first goal's not conceded if it's Onana in goal. I'm pretty confident of that. Second goal would have been conceded because we don't know how to defend set pieces properly. So that would be my only concern there. From that point onwards, obviously we then get to the 60th minute. The changes come in. Again, as I mentioned in the last game, really impressed with the youngsters. You can clearly see that team chemistry. Again, Collier and Onyedeli in midfield look an absolutely fantastic midfield partnership. Be interested to see how much game time those two get respectively, especially since we're still looking at signing more midfielders. Obviously, Amrabat, Ugarte, etc. Zubimendi being linked. So I'm interested to see what we do because I think Collier and Onyedeli look fantastic already. And I would honestly be looking at giving them more opportunities rather than spending 70 million on an Ugarte, because I honestly think we don't need him. I really don't. I think we've got established midfielders at this football club already that are ready to make the step up. Wheatley looked dangerous, runs in behind again. Those long balls being set downfield. I thought Scanlon played much better. Again, this is where I question how much we were really being tested, because Scanlon got rinsed by Martinelli. Probably because he's an attacking midfielder playing right back. But going forward, I thought Scanlon looked really good. I thought Mason Mount looked sharp, other than when he had the one opportunity to actually hit the ball in the back of the net. Why he didn't shoot at that opportunity, I don't really know. And like I say, all round, I think the rest of them did all right. Apart from Antony. Antony was awful again. And I just, honestly, like, I know the old adage is to own your mistakes. That doesn't literally mean keep them. That doesn't mean literally own them. That means you have to accept that sometimes you get it wrong. And Antony is just not working. So much so that Ten Hag took him off. They're saying that it's because his wrist was hurt, and his wrist was obviously massively taped up, and he walked away holding it. But, I mean, I'd have taken him off for how bad he was playing when he came on. It is not happening for Antony at the moment. And if we're spending 15 to 20 million on Mazraoui because he's got a really good working relationship with Antony, rather than we're just signing him because we need another right back, I mean, I would just cut my losses. Again, I've already spoken about it. Amad was fantastic. Rashford was better. We know how good Garnacho is. Pellistri has had a wonderful Copa America and deserves game time at Manchester United this season. Antony and Sancho are the money makers, the money burners, and they're the easiest to get. Well, they're not the easiest to get rid of, but they're the two I would get rid of. They're probably like, you know, we've spent, nearly 200 million on the pair of them. We're giving them a combined wages of over 500 grand a week. And we don't need either of them. Get rid of both of them. Find a way to get rid of both of them and go into the season with Rashford, Garnacho, Amad and Pellistri. And honestly, we will be so much better off for it. But that's going to conclude my review of today's game against Betis. Like I say, happy with the overall performance. Obviously, disappointed that we've still conceded 2 sloppy goals, but we've got another win. It builds on the performance against Arsenal, which I still thought was good. Gets us ready for the game against Liverpool, which is obviously going to be our final game ahead of the Community Shield against Manchester City, where we'll then see the likes of Bruno, Dalot, maybe Martinez and Garnacho, etc. coming back into the side. Maybe get a look at Xerxes as well. But we'll see. I'm happy. Gutted that the news has come out this morning that Yoro's out for 3 months and Rasmus is out for 6 weeks. But we move. The team still played well without them. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching as always. I'll catch you at lunchtime for those Olympic quarter-final predictions.